are free and have the right to pick whatever tree they so choose to get behind. I want to tell you how the people got their money's worth, to give you 2 or 3 cases. Mr. Gibbs mentioned a moment ago from Balsam Gap to Soco Gap, 18 miles. When that job came up for construction or to be bid on, my engineer, Mr. Alan Siler, and I decided we'd walk the whole job one day. We packed our packs full of juices and ham sandwiches and everything you could think of, and it's just like he said a moment ago. Those grade stakes on the center line had been there, they had rotted out, and we had a whale of a time trying to follow the center line. If you have never walked a proposed center line before the road is built, you've never been on a hike in your life. You go down into a guff and back up, across a rock cliff and that sort of thing. We topped out at Water Rock Knob about 1 o'clock and started down to Soco Gap. And I heard a man holler. And I told my engineer, I says, there's a man down in here somewhere in trouble. If you'll stay here, I'll go see if I can find him. I went about a half a mile right down through a laurel slick, and I found him sitting on a log, trembling, wet with perspiration, totally given out. And I gave him juices and ham sandwiches, and he said, I believe with your help I can make it back up to the center line. He said, I walked in here from Soco Gap. I thought I'd take a shortcut, and I got lost. Well, it was 8 or 9 o'clock that night before we got him out. When he got ready to leave, he shook my hand and said, E.J., you're looking at one contractor that you'll not have to be bothered with next week. Sucker. They read the bids out the following week. Mr. A.B. Burton of Lynchburg, Virginia, beat me $5,000 on a $3 million job. Never in the history of this country have the people, or did the people, receive as much construction as they received from the contractors. Whenever Nello L. Tier Sr. and Nello L. Tier Jr. and Dillard Tier, Mr. W.E. Graham, sons Luke and John, Mr. Jack Blythe and Jack Jr., whenever those 3 people butted heads on wanting to do a project on the Blue Ridge Parkway, gentlemen, I can assure you, you got your money's worth, because they wrung all the profit out of it. It was also true of the Clement brothers from Hickory, Albert brothers from Salem, Virginia, Mr. Mills from Frankfort, Kentucky, Loudermilks from Denver, and right down the line. And I certainly would be remiss if I did not mention one contractor here today in particular, Mr. Joe Troitino. If you have ever observed and loved the beautiful rock work on the bridges, Joe is of Spanish origin, and most of his employees were. And one day, I had a job down here at Deep Gap, and he had the rock work on the bridges, and I found he and the engineer in a squabble. And they were of Spanish origin, and they would plead innocent, and me don't understand when they get jumped on, see? And Joe came up and put his arm on the engineer, and he said, leave my men alone. They know what they are doing. You will like our work when we are finished. We are not finished. Whenever a person rides on the Blue Ridge Parkway, it makes the poor feel rich, and it makes the old feel young. Ladies and gentlemen, this 470 miles belongs to its 105 major builders and all of the people of America. Some of them are living, some of them are dead, but most of them are yet to be born. Therefore, it is of utmost importance that we take good care of it. Thank you so very much.
You're beginning to sense a little bit that we have a bunch of characters back here. They were and still are. But in the audience is also a character. Will the gentleman with a white hat please come right down here? Senor, see? Just turn right back around if you would, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to share with you an immigrant boy, Joe Trotino, son of a stonemason in Spain, made his way out of Spain by Lady Liberty and wound up here on the Parkway. And much of the beautiful work, the stonework, the rock work that you know, Joe Trotino and the Trotinos, one way or the other from Spain, did it. Thank you, Mr. Joe Trotino. Not just Joe Trotino, the Fischetti brothers and others, Italians. We've had this kind of people, and all of them delighted. The immigrant boy is now a citizen with grandchildren. Glory be. This is the Parkway. The original idea of the Blue Ridge Parkway was, let's put people to work. Let's provide jobs. Let's get out there and let those mountain men have some money. This parkway has touched men and families and children, but always work. I want to share with you a big man, a man who has done his share of the work, was born on this parkway. His father owned land along this parkway. This man worked for the parkway and retired from the parkway, but I want him to come and tell you the parkway employees. Leo Collins, parkway employee.
Well, there's two things I'm not, as a speaker and a politician. I always, my motto was, you learn more by listening than you do talking, because if a guy's meant to talk more than listen, he'd have two mouths instead of two ears. But I've enjoyed all my work with the Parkway, and now what I'm here for right now is trying to get a group of the Blue Ridge Parkway retirees together. We're in the process of organizing Alumni Association. We started about a year ago. And the committee, we had our first meeting last year at High Meadows, and we appointed a committee to draft up some bylaws for the Blue Ridge Parkway Alumni Association. So this evening, we plan to meet out here at High Meadows. We have dinner there about 6:30, and meet there about 7:30. And I've seen the most retirees here today I've ever seen in my life. And I hope all of you can attend that meeting tonight at 7:30, because we want to try to get something passed on our bylaws for the Blue Ridge Parkway Alumni Association. And meet us there at 7:30, and also we want to try to get some rules and fees and so forth set up so we can get our organization rolling, because the last 10 or 15 years we've had a lot of people retired on the Blue Ridge Parkway. I know the early out got upward toward 30 people. And hopefully we want to open this thing up for people, anybody that worked on the Parkway, it don't matter where they're retired. If they're retired in California, why, they're just as welcome as the guy next door. So I hope as many of you that can, that's interested. And one more thing, we hope to open it up for the current Blue Ridge Parkway employees to join the organization, because the Parkway has been in existence for about 50 years now, and so far there's not any organization for the retirees. And a place where I've worked for over 30 years, I like to keep in touch at least once a year, if not more often. So that's one reason we're trying to organize this Alumni Association, so we can have a little reunion once a year and get together similar to today, and hopefully we'll get going on it a little better and as the time goes on. So thank everyone.
Leo wouldn't tell you the type of work he has done. Anything from making the beautiful signs you see to all the ditches and everything else. He is one reason the Parkway is so beautiful. But the Parkway is so beautiful also because some people had something to give. And in this audience, there is a little girl who has ruined my story. I've been telling people that we're serving the third generation of people on the Parkway. It ain't so, the man says. And here's why it's not so. In the audience, sitting right out here, would you please share with me 3 people, Miss Edwards, Miss Farland, and Miss Farland. Come right up here, please. I've got something to tell about these people. On the Parkway, many of you have been to the Julian Price Park. Miss Kathleen Bryan Edwards is the granddaughter of the man who gave that land. Miss Melanie Taylor Farland is the great-granddaughter, and the little tiny one is Margaret McKinley Farland, great-great-granddaughter. This is the Parkway, folks. Thank you. What I wonder is what little Margaret will see and what she'll be telling. She's going to live in 2 centuries and it'll still be the Parkway. How marvelous indeed. But some of you got to eat today, some of you didn't. The man coming to speak to you is the man to speak to in case you didn't. The man coming to speak to you is also the man to speak to in case you did. In order for the traveling public to be served, the original designer said, all right, let's have along the Parkway some lodges, let's have some food, let's have some inns and this sort. And those are called concessionaires. And let's share one concessionaire who will speak for all of them. Mr. Garner Hanson. Mr. Garner.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank all of you for the Baptists for staying. I know that we only have Baptists out there because only Baptists will stay this long for a testimony meeting. And I appreciate that. We have a lot of our fellow employees and former employees of concessions along the Parkway, and I want to pay tribute to you for the job that you have done over the years in serving the thousands of visitors that come to the Blue Ridge. You know, and looking at the crowd here and seeing some of us have bald heads and some of us have gray hair and trouble getting around reminds me of a story. Gary Everhart went down into Florida a short time ago, and he went out to play golf, and lo and behold, he said he wanted a caddy. And the pro said, well, we only have one caddy left. And he's 85 years old. And Gary said, well, I certainly don't want him because I want someone, you know, to see my ball. I have trouble seeing. He said, well, don't bother about that. The fellow we have has 20/20 eyesight, and he can see a net 1,000 foot away. And lo and behold, who did they have trot out but Sam Weems? So they went out to play on the golf course, and Gary hit the ball. And he said, Sam, did you see it? He said, I sure did. He said, well, where did it go? He said, I forgot. National Park Concessions Incorporated was privileged in 1942 to be chosen by the National Park Service to begin concessionaire services on the Blue Ridge, the first area, located right here at Cumberland Knob. They had enough electricity coming in here that we could have 25-watt light bulbs, but not enough to provide for any refrigerators or any other type of equipment. So we started our service on May 15th, 1942. On June 23rd, we sent an urgent telegram to the National Park Service in Washington, asking them to relieve us of this responsibility because we were paying out $200 a day and we were only taking in $100. At that time, they asked us then to extend that service at least until August the 2nd. This is the time that the war came along and we were in the process of rationing gas. Stan Abbott was the superintendent and he asked us to continue service. We did. Then in 1943, we had a new superintendent and we started our service again after it was decided that we needed to provide some gas, even though it was rationed. we need to provide some food, and we need to provide some lodging and some drink. Well, we didn't have any lodging, but the plans were underway. We remember quite well our first experience with Sam Weems, who was superintendent. We went in for a conference to check about getting rate approvals for the prices that we charge the public. You know, the Park Service approves all rates. And our first encounter in visiting with Sam Weems in his new superintendency job was to spend 2.5 days in his office trying to convince him that we should have 5 cents for a Coke and 5 cents for a cone of ice cream we were going to sell here at Cumberland Knob. Finally, after 2 days, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was time for him to go home, he says, "I'll approve it if you'll give refills on the drink and double dips on the ice cream cones." We have been privileged to serve the visitors here since 1942. We've served thousands and thousands of visitors and have helped in some small way to make their visit to the Parkway enjoyable. But it wasn't our company. It was the people that worked with us and for us that deserve the credit for the enjoyment that those people who went back to Maine, to Florida, to San Francisco, Seattle, and other places, and told others about this wonderful spot in North Carolina and Virginia that God has made for all of us. We have appreciated the opportunity to work with the National Park Service, and speaking for the Peaks of Water Company and the Pisgah Inn Incorporated and the Brennergate Cabin and the Trading Post and the people down the Crafts of the United States, all of those people, we appreciate the opportunity that we have of being a part of this wonderful Blue Ridge Parkway. Thank you.
To work with and participate in some of those lodges and some of the food. At any rate, those two are assets and part of the dream. I want to go to another side of work. You remember the idea, provide work for the needy. Out of that concept came the now well-famed Civilian Conservation Corps. These were young men unemployed, young men out of high school or not even graduating from high school. Nowhere to go, no job, no anything, no hope, dead end. And yet came the Civilian Conservation Corps, part of the New Deal program, and from all over the country they came. This Parkway had a camp at Dalton Park, one at Galax, and on up the Parkway it went in that fashion. I want to share with you one man who had the good fortune to come from up north, to come south, find himself a home, and has remained here. And he'll tell you about the story. I'm talking about a man whose ancestry came from Poland. I'm going to introduce him to you as Pete Kolnick, representing the Civilian Conservation Corps. Pete?
Thank you, Mr. Jolly. I'm representing the Civilian Conservation Corps, and before I get started, I'd like to see a show of hands of all of my alumni from the Civilian Conservation Corps. How many have we got here? We have 2 back here, out front, many. I was a young boy, and I was fortunate. I was fortunate that on April the 5th, 1933, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed a bill that started the CCC. I want to express my appreciation for this opportunity to tell you a little bit about it. My comments are broken down into 3 groups. 1, this is a celebration. 2, this is an appreciation for an opportunity. And 3, a good luck. The good luck. 1, I survived World War II and a long career in business. 2, I ended up in God's country. My background began in Pennsylvania, in western Pennsylvania. I was a young man of European descent, first generation. My daddy was brought over to dig coal. During the Depression, things were tough, very tough. We think we have it tough now. There was 6 in the family, and the CCC was developed to give us jobs. We had to go to school until you were 16, and of course I graduated a few months later from high school. There were no jobs. My father had the wisdom to say, son, I think you can do better besides going into those dangerous coal mines. The economic depression in the late 30s, after the depression of the 30s, was a difficult time. And in western Pennsylvania, there were many of us. I still remember the morning that I arrived on the Skyline Drive, just south of the intersection of Route 211 that goes from Luray, Virginia to Washington, D.C. It was chilly when the first sergeant aroused us at 5 in the morning and made us stand at attention and welcomed us because we arrived there the night before. It was late. I was there because I couldn't get the kind of jobs that my father thought I should have. The family needed money. There was no money to go to college. And this wonderful opportunity came to us. They paid us not a whole lot, but in those days it was tremendous. I remember, $21 a month. 7 of it was given to us for our laundry and a little recreation that we rode on into town on the back of the truck to go to a movie. And out of the 21, 14 was sent back to the families at home so that they could eat. One of the most important things, if you ask me, that I can remember and that I relate to, and if those of you who know me, I have had a very successful career, and that is the CCC camp developed in young men the work ethic. It taught them how to work. It taught them, same as college does today, how to live on their own and live with their fellow man. I worked in the CC camps for 22 months. I was the company clerk. And in March of 1941, the Inspector General asked me if I would join the National Park Service. And I left, and I was appointed the chief company clerk, or chief clerk, to the superintendent of Rocky Knob Park at Woolwine in Floyd, Virginia. In the first week of March of 1942, which I'll remember as long as I live, I came to Sparta, North Carolina because I was transferred to Downton Park to work for Mr. C.L. Sink from Gold Hill, North Carolina. It was one of the largest snows I've ever witnessed, and I spent the first night in Sparta. I enjoyed Downton Park. I met some wonderful people, and one of my associates, who was also a clerk there, spoke to you with the invocation. I enjoyed it so much that I hated to lose my tenure. However, as most of you remember that are my age, along came World War II. And one day I got a postcard from a friend of mine in Luray, Virginia, where I registered for the draft. And he said, son, your number's going to be up around July the 4th. And this was back around May. And he said, if you want to do something else besides being drafted, he said, you'll have an opportunity. So I went to my boss and I said, I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave you. We were at that time building the maintenance station at Spruce Pine. Here again, I was lucky and fortunate. He had friends, Senator Reynolds. I received an appointment to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. And I got the appointment from President Roosevelt as a cadet midshipman. I graduated in December of 1943 and became an ensign in the United States Navy. One of the important events of my tenure at Laurel Springs, for which I am ever grateful and thankful, I met my lovely wife, Rowena, and we have been married come December the 11th, 42 years, right? I think so. Don't want to be wrong there. I stayed in the Navy for 4 years and completed my tour traveling the Atlantic and the Pacific, including Korea and China, and returned back in early 1946. My time was up, and I did not get back with this wonderful organization. However, the work ethic I learned, I got an opportunity. I went to business school for 6 months. I finished an accounting course, and the president said, there's a young man up in Wilkesboro, North Carolina, who needs a bookkeeper. And I went there on November the 15th, 1946, and this November will be 39 years. And we started what is today known as Lowe's Companies, Inc., with sales in excess of $2 billion, 278 operations in 21 states. I retired on December the 31st as the chairman of the board and the office of the president. It's been a great life, but I have never forgotten the Blue Ridge Parkway. I really appreciate Mr. Collins' statement about starting an alumni. I hope he will accept me even though I didn't retire, because I served both in the CCC and the civilian compensation. My only wish is that I hope this day and age we may come about in some fashion or form to give our young people, both white and black, ethnic and American, an opportunity to live among each other in an atmosphere that we had, to learn how to work with each other, and to live with each other. And I believe we can solve some of the problems that we are having, especially those of you who have recently saw what happened in England in 2 days of rioting. I think we can prevent it. I think that we can do something for them. They are the future, and let's not forget them. Those of us who were given this opportunity, for which we are thankful, and this opportunity to speak to you, for which I am thankful. I wish you well in your future life. Thank you.
If you will take Pete and multiply him by the millions,